Hi, good afternoon everyone, and welcome to U.S. Consulate Chennai. My name is Ashley Menard. I'm a Vice Counsel here. I work with doing visa adjudications and working on some of our non-immigrant visa issues. I also want to thank our people watching virtually today on Facebook, and just want to encourage those that are watching through our live feed to make any comments or questions that they have. We'll be answering those at the end, as well as you can follow the WhatsApp. You can send a WhatsApp text message, also located at the bottom of the screen. So let's begin the presentation. So applying for a U.S. student visa. I'm really encouraged to see so much people here today and interested in studying the U.S. A little bit of facts and figures studying in America. More than 1 million international students apply in the United States. Of those, about 1 out of 6 of those students come from India. These students come from a variety of areas, backgrounds, as well as they study different things. We encourage a diverse student population in America, and we encourage you really to follow your dreams, pursue what makes you happy. In the U.S., we have 3 different main student visa categories. The first is what we call an F1. This is typically for full-time university students studying for a degree. This could be a degree in a particular subject area. It could also be if you're pursuing language studies. Our second visa class is our M1. This is for non-academic vocational sort of programs. The most common one we see here is for pilot and aircraft training. And then we have our J1 student exchange visitors. This really is a catch-all category. It includes some of our research fellows for those that are doing higher academic pursuits, includes some of our medical studied students, as well as some that do particular internships and summer work programs. We also have our B1, B2 visa category. This is our typical business tourist visa. For this, you typically would apply for this, say, if you and your parents want to go to the States to check out some university campuses. Occasionally, we'll have students who would like to, they have to take a mandatory test or some other sort of exam in order to further along their studies, their application process. So the first step, you want to select, apply, and be accepted to a U.S. university. This must be an accredited university. And Education USA here is an excellent resource as an initial first step. You want to talk about what kind of studies you want to pursue, what universities may be a right fit, and then how you would go about with that application process. Once you're accepted, that university will send a form which we call an I-20. This indicates that you have been accepted into the program. It may talk about any sort of different job opportunities that might be tied to that specific course of study. And one thing to note is when you are applying, and the I-20 form itself indicates a very specific university. So you get accepted to a couple of universities, you decide on University A, but then, you know, after a while you change your mind and you decide University B is a better fit. You'll just have to work to get a new form and then apply specifically for the university that you want to attend. When should you apply for that visa? You will apply after you get accepted into that accredited university and you receive that I-20 form. Once you receive that form, you need to pay what we call a SEVIS fee. This fee indicates that you have provided the payment for the proper documentation. Once you receive those documents, you can go ahead and start to think about scheduling your visa appointment. The sooner the better. One thing to note, though, is that you cannot go for the visa appointment until 120 days before your course of study will start. So you do want to try to get that, that appointment around that time frame. You can always go on our our website at the U.S. Consulate Chennai to see what the wait times are, because they do vary every single day based on demand and different factors going on within the consulate. And then once you go through the process, you get your visa, you can go to the U.S. about 30 days before your course of study starts. In order to start your visa application process, you'll want to log into the website here. I have, for those participating live with us today, have sent out a document that has some important information as far as different websites and other sources of information for you. And then once you go here and fill out your profile, then you can start your application. We call it a SEAC form. This is just the application form. Please fill it out completely and truthfully. And then you're going to pay the application fees. There's a variety of ways to do that. You can find those sources of information in the application as well as on the U.S. Consulate website. Different types of ways to pay is through EFT, mobile phone, or through several of the different bank branches that we have here. And then you're going to schedule 2 different appointments. Here in India, you can go to any of the consulates to apply for your visa. It's not regional specific. But once you choose the area you want to apply to, you will go to what we call the Visa Application Center. These are very helpful folks that help with some more administrative processing for our cases. You'll go to them first with your appointment, where you get some of the biometrics done. This will include fingerprints, submitting either passport photos or getting your photo taken. And then they'll make sure that you have all the documents that you need in order to successfully go to your visa appointment, which will be the following day. One thing you want to make sure before you get your appointment is that you pay your SEVIS fee. This will delay your visa application process if it's not paid before you go to your appointment. I encourage you also, you'll receive a receipt, a proof of payment. Bring that with you to the interview. You may be asked for it, and it's just useful to have because sometimes there's a delay in the system where we can't actually see if it's been paid or not. So as I mentioned, your first step will be to go to the Visa Application Center. You'll schedule the appointment for both fingerprinting as well as the photo. Arrive about 15 minutes prior. There's no reason why you should go any earlier than that. It is based on your appointment time, and you will not be accepted earlier. So, you know, just to be mindful of your time and theirs, you can just go about 15 minutes prior. And then the next day, here in India, we have what we call just-on-time services. So whatever time your appointment is the time that you'll be accepted into the consulate for your interview. Again, there's really no need to come really early because you'll have to wait outside, and right now with the temperatures, it's not very comfortable. So arrive just on time for your interview. You'll go through security, make sure all your documents are in order, and then while you're there, your first steps will be document check, just to make sure you have all the right documents, as well as a verification of the fingerprints. And then after that, you'll go for your interview. Please make sure you bring these documents with you. These ones are the mandatory ones that you'll most likely be asked at the interview. So the day of, as I mentioned, arrive just on time. Bring your appointment letter with you, and it has that time on it. Please plan accordingly. Here at the consulate, we don't really have a place to put backpacks, cell phones, laptops, etc. So just keep those personal effects in your vehicle or keep them with a family member, and just bring the required documentation with you. While you're in the visa lobby, after you go through security, your fingerprints will be verified. This is just to ensure that you are the applicant that has made that has applied, as well as received the biometrics from the day before. And then you'll be interviewed by myself or one of my colleagues. At the interviews are rather brief, so just be prepared. Be prepared to explain why you want to study. Why did you select the school you did? What are your dreams and your pursuits after your courses of study? And don't be offended if we ask some personal questions. It's more just to verify that you are qualified for this type of visa for whatever your purpose of travel is to America. The thing that we are looking for the most is, are you a credible student? What a credible student means is we're not looking that you have made the right school selection, or that we're not looking for a particular field of study. What we want to know is, did the school that you apply to and select, is that a good fit for you? Can you speak credibly of why you chose that school, why you want to pursue the studies that you want to study, that you want to go to America to pursue this course of study? That is your main purpose, and that's what we're looking for. So be prepared to talk about why you selected that school, how you'll pay for the studies, and what you'll want to do after. And really, there's no magical words we're looking for. I know a lot of people might be giving you advice, telling you that you need to have very specific canned speeches, or that you have to say the right things, and that's not true. We just want you to be you. We want you to just shine through it and really just be open and honest and frank on what it is that you want to study, and what makes you a good student to pursue those dreams. So what happens after the interview? At the time of the interview, the decision will be made by the adjudicating officer, and then they'll let you know whether you have been accepted, or which we would say approved. If you are denied under Section 214B of the law, for this type of visa class, there is an assumption that every applicant is an intending immigrant, meaning they want to come and stay in the United States. So what we're looking for is proof from what you said in your interview that you're there for a temporary purpose, and that purpose is a legitimate form of travel. And then sometimes we just have a lot more paperwork to do. We're a bureaucracy, and that's just a reality of our job. So sometimes your application might be under administrative processing. This is usually for a whole host of issues. Normally it's just paperwork we have to do at our end. Sometimes we need further documentation from you, and we will specify at the time of the interview or in follow-up emails on specifically what that might be. I can't really give too many examples of what the administrative processing, but sometimes we might need transcripts, or if you're a working professional pursuing some research in the US, we might ask for a CV just to be able to make a better decision on that case. Once your application has been approved, the adjudicating officer will keep your passport for processing in order to put the visa in it. It usually takes 3 to 5 business days, but it could take a little longer depending on workload. When it is ready, you will receive an SMS indicating that it's been processed, and either you can go to the visa application center of your choosing to pick it up, or another option that we have is to do at-home delivery. This is through our premium delivery service. It's a courier, and there is an extra charge associated with that. So that is one option we like to notify everyone is available for your convenience. Here's some, if you have further questions, particularly if you have very specific questions based on your need, feel free to reach out to any of these websites, emails, or phone numbers. And I'll leave this up as I take some questions. I'll start with some in the audience, and then we'll move it on to those that are following us through this podcast. Again, you can either ask those questions on Facebook or through the WhatsApp. Great. Who would like to start?
Raise your hand if you have a question.
Yes, madam.
Does this process apply to a student who's done her undergrad and currently living in the United States on an OPT? The same process, the biometrics, everything, is it the same?
So once a student is in the U.S., if they would like to change their status in order to pursue a higher level of education, or if they get an opportunity to work in the U.S., say on an H-1B, then they would actually go through the U.S. The CIS, the Immigration Services, where then they would petition to either extend their status in the U.S. or they would change their status either by changing their schools and or say pursuing a temporary work situation. So what we do here at this end is we determine if the applicant is eligible to travel to the U.S. Once you receive that visa and you are at that port of entry, it is actually Department of Homeland Security and our immigration services that determine how long you can stay in the country, if your purpose of entering the country is legitimate. And then once you're in the U.S., they take control of those sort of decisions.
If she's already in the U.S., should she come back to India to reapply, or can she do the whole process?
It's not necessary. She can just stay there and apply with immigration services.
Even if her visa, like the stamp on the passport says June 10th?
I'm not sure the specifics. I'd hate to talk. Yes, please.
You should ask her to go and speak to her designated school official who will be able to advise her on whether she needs to leave the country and come back to stamp it again, or whether she can get it done while she's a student there. So please ask her to contact the DSO at her university.
And again, just for those listening, the question was if you're already in the U.S., say pursuing an undergraduate degree and would like to change your status either to pursue a higher education and or work, what would the procedures be? And talk to your school officials. They're pretty knowledgeable about this process. And then you can always refer to our different websites, travel.state.gov, as well as US CIS, the U.S. Immigration Services, to ask about more specific questions about your case. Thank you. Sir?
So, my source of funding is my relative and a blood relative. So, should I need to show some kind of proof that it is actually a blood relative?
Sure. So the question was, do I need, if my source of funding is from a relative or another source, how would I prove that, and do I need to verify that? At the interview, we may ask for documentation. We will definitely ask how you're funding this program, whether it's through yourself, family members, savings, or if you're taking out educational loans. What we are really looking for is that you have a plan to sufficiently fund the first year, and then you have a plan to cover the rest of the academic studies. We may ask for documentation to prove that. That usually comes in the form of bank statements, IT returns, but we're not really looking for proof of relationship. What's more important is, do you have sufficient funding to cover that first year, as well as a plan to cover the rest of your duration of study?
So proof of relationship is not needed?
It is not the main factor that we're looking for.
No. Should it be brought with us, or is it not needed?
For the proof of relationship, you're welcome to bring any documentation you want, but that is not a main factor in what we're looking for. And I do want to just say regarding documentation, we see a lot of times people hear from various sources that they need a lot of documentation, and then they get very worried that they won't have the proper type of documentation. As I mentioned before, the documentation that you absolutely should have with you is here: the appointment letter, the passport, SEVIS receipt, the I-20. You may want to bring supporting documentation, say your financials, your transcripts, maybe a GRE or other sort of standardized test scores. But please do not go and find someone that can get these documents for you. Those documents should be real, they should be valid, and if we find that any of these documents have been fraudulent in any way, then that will severely impact your eligibility for this visa and perhaps future visas. So again, we just want you to be open, honest, be yourself, be prepared with the documentation that's necessary, and really just be prepared to speak about why you want to study where you want to study. Yes, sir?
I have a question regarding the first procedure for applying.
Mm-hmm.
Do we actually need an I-20 to start the visa process? Like the form from, because my university is delaying actually for sending me the I-20. But could I actually start the process and then, further when the university sends the I-20, I can use it? Or I don't know.
You know, I don't know the specifics on the timing of that.
You need the I-20 to apply.
Okay.
Even for starting.
So the question was, do you need the I-20 in order to start the application process? And yes, you do need the I-20. And just keep in mind that for applying, you are allowed to apply up to 180 days prior to your course of study starting. Yes, sir.
So the visa appointment and the entire process is tied to one passport number. So I have a minor spelling mistake in my passport and I'm applying for it again. So let's say I book the appointment for the visa today and it's on June 8th and my passport comes at around June or June 1st or 2nd. So my passport number is going to change. So how is that going to be handled?
Sure. The question was if I have already started or finished the application process and then the documentation such as a passport has changed, what would you do? And unfortunately, I don't know the specifics of that either. I would just recommend reaching out. Yeah. To our website, thetraveldocs.com, and then they would be able to help you with that specific case. One thing to note, though, is when you do present the passport, your visa and the date of birth, or your name on the visa and the date of birth will match. I know sometimes passports have names that are not preferred by the applicant, but and they would like that to be switched within the visa. Unfortunately, we do have to keep those consistent. Yes, sir.
If I live in a different address now, and the address on my passport is different from where I live now, so is that going to create some kind of a problem?
Sure. A follow-up question on documentation, whether or not if the address in the passport is different than the address on the application, will that have any sort of impact, or does that need to be changed? And for us, no, there's no issue with having different addresses. We understand people move and it change. Yep. Yes, sir.
If my passport is from one particular state and I apply for the visa interview from another state, is there going to be any kind of problem regarding that?
Sure. The question was if my passport indicates that I'm from or living in one state and then I apply to in a different state, will that have any sort of impact? And the answer is no. India is what we call a one consular district when it comes to most visa classes, which means you can apply anywhere you want. While U.S. Consulate Chennai services most of the South Indian states, we do receive applicants occasionally from some of the northern states, and they're able to do that. Is there any online questions?
Yes,
that?
There is. I can read out one
Sure.
on WhatsApp. It's a student called Pavan. He says the question is about my transcripts. I'm having my F1 visa interview in 2 weeks, but my final semester mark sheets have not been given to us as yet. So if the visa officer asks to have a look at my transcripts, can I show them the ones I have till semester 7 and say that I'm awaiting my 8th semester mark sheets? Will this be fine?
Great. And the question was, if my visa application is coming up soon and I don't have my final marks from this semester, is it okay just to show my prior marks and explain that I'm still waiting for this semester's marks? And the answer is yes. We understand, especially at this time of the year, not all of the marks have been in. People are still waiting to take some of their qualification exams for other pursuits. And again, these interviews they're interviews based. They're not document based. So just be prepared to discuss, how you did in school. What was your ranking? Why did you take the courses you did? And how will that help you not only with this degree, but your future pursuits? Yes, sir.
Please brief on the part you told about the change of name from the passport to the visa?
Sure. With the change of name, again, going back to documentation and making sure all the names, residencies match. With the name on the passport, and then if it's not the same as, on the transcripts. Here in this region, we understand that naming conventions and kind of the way that the names are presented can change from different sources. It's always useful to try to have them be the same, but as long as it's clearly shown that it's you as the student, that's what's most important. And again, we do not rely solely on documents. What we rely on is the person in front of us telling their story. Mm-hmm. Yes, sir.
It's regarding my daughter who's currently in the US right now, and her visa expires on June 9th, and she's awaiting I-20. She's paid the minimum amount of $500 for I-20.
Mm-hmm.
What if she doesn't get it before the 9th of June?
Sure, I would recommend just going to our website for the specifics. I'd hate to give you the wrong advice here, especially since I'm not fully aware of the case. Again, I would definitely talk to the school and see what they can do to expedite that. And the Immigration Services website's uscis.gov. They also have some pretty good information on what to do in changing statuses or extending statuses once you're in the U.S.
The current school that she passed out from Purdue is not very helpful there, nor her new school, Syracuse, is not very helpful there. So
She has contacted us. They haven't really given much information.
Yeah.
That's why we're here.
Yeah, no, it's...
You could share the email ID for the travel docs, the support help in India. You could
Yes.
send an email and explain your case.
Travel docs?
Yeah,
Yes,
you
this
send
one
an
here.
email to that email ID, they'll be able to guide you further.
Great.
We have a question on another question from WhatsApp group. I will be applying. Okay, so if the F1 visa is granted or refused, will the B tourist visa on my passport be revoked at the same time?
Great, that's an excellent question. The question was if I apply for an F1 and it is either approved or denied, and I already have a business tourist visa in my passport, will that also be revoked? And the answer is no. Every visa class has a very specific purpose of travel. And when you go to the interview, we interview and adjudicate based on that specific purpose. Every visa class has different requirements, different standards. And just because it was determined maybe that when you applied to your F1 that at the time you were not a credible student, it does not mean that you're not a credible tourist or other business person. So just because you have one visa in your passport, you are allowed to have multiple different types of visas at the same time. And every time you travel to the US and when you go to the immigration officers, you just want to be specific on your purpose of travel so they can determine which visa you're actually traveling on at that particular moment.
Just in case my visa is rejected, so how do I have to proceed further?
Sure. So the question is, what happens if I do go to my interview and my visa was rejected? What are my next steps and options? You are more than welcome to reapply at any time for any of our non-immigrant visa statuses. And what you'll want to do is just, when you reapply, you should reapply if your circumstances have changed or if you have new information to provide to the adjudicating officer. U.S. immigration law is very specific as to different standards that need to be met for each visa class. And adjudicating officers, we really pride ourselves on trying to be consistent with applying the U.S. law to these different situations. So what we are looking for when you reapply is that has your circumstance changed that allows you now to be qualified for that particular visa.
Present date, like
No, there's no time frame. The question is there a time frame between when you're denied for the visa and then reapplying for that same type of visa? And the answer is no.
So immediately we can do?
You can apply to the same consulate or any of the consular districts within India. Depending on for student visas, it's any in India. Mm-hmm. Yes, sir, in the back.
I just came across this information as a word of mouth. I'm not so sure whether it's right out. Certain highly technical fields like nuclear, chemical, or aerospace for that matter, they say that the issue of visas is quite difficult. May I know what kind of information does the visa officer expect from us during the interview?
Sure. Again, we adjudicate all of our visas for that visa class consistently. What we're looking for is, are you a credible student? Does the subject you're pursuing make sense based on what you studied before, what your work activities were before? Does your plans after you study make sense with that education you're pursuing? And we encourage everyone to apply for all sort of fields. I know in India a lot of students tend to come from more of the STEM fields, the engineering, the science, information technology, but we really encourage students to apply to everywhere. Specifically to apply for some of these STEM ones, it's no different than any other program that you pursue. So what we're looking for again is, are you a credible student? Do you have means to pay for it? And are your plans after you study consistent with what you're studying? Yes, sir.
I applied for a set of universities for spring 2018 and my visa was refused. Must I mention those universities in the officer asks me this time for fall 2018?
I'm sorry, what was the last part?
I applied for a set of universities for spring 2018.
Mm-hmm.
My visa was refused then.
Mm-hmm.
I applied for another set for fall 2018. If the officer asks me for the universities I've applied to, must I also mention those old ones?
So the question is, if I've already applied for attending a school this semester, and unfortunately I wasn't accepted, but would like to try for another university in the fall, do I need to mention those previous universities that I tried for? And the answer is, I'm not sure exactly what you'll be asked, but we usually ask the questions, you know, why did you select this school? What other schools did you apply to? And be able to honestly just speak about why you selected that school and why it's a good fit for you. Yes, sir, in the back.
Can I show only the first year funding or all 4-year funding?
Sure. The question is financials. What do I need to show at the interview? And what we are looking for is that you have sufficient funding to cover the first full year of your academic studies, whether that's through parents and other family members, scholarships, loans. Maybe you worked a couple years before and had some savings. And then what we're looking for is, do you have a plan to sufficiently cover the other years? And this is done through a variety of ways. Again, it's an interview-based process, so we will have a discussion about that. So be prepared to talk about how you're planning to pay for these studies. You may be asked to show how you're going to pay for it through documentation, which might be a savings, a loan document, or maybe your parents' IT returns. But again, those documents are not what we're solely basing our decisions on.
I have another question. A student says, I was denied a student visa under 214B category.
Mm-hmm.
What situation do I need to change to be able to get a visa the next time around?
Sure. The question was, I applied for my visa and I was denied under the section 214B as we call it. When I reapply, what do I need to show that's new and different? And unfortunately, I can't speak to that particular case from our WhatsApp caller. So I'm not sure. Plus, we don't really talk specifics for privacy reasons. Again, as I've emphasized, just really try to demonstrate those different categories I mentioned, your finances, how you're a credible student and your plans afterwards. Yes, ma'am.
If I'm funding my studies through education loan, will I be asked to show proof on how I'm repaying it?
Sure. The question, again, with finances, if I'm planning on paying through financial loans, do I need to show documentation in order to prove that? And the answer is you may be asked for that documentation. Every situation is unique, but it is not our sole basis of making the decision. So just be prepared to show documents if asked. If you do not have those documents with you and the officer feels that it's absolutely necessary to see them, then they may put your application under administrative processing until you could provide those. But really, it's more about having a discussion and seeing how you have discussed with us how you're paying for that education.
Just a small request, can everybody take off their IDs? My colleague is taking some pictures and we cannot have the IDs shown in the photographs.
Great.
Kindly put them away in your pockets, your handbags.
And I don't think it's been brought up yet, but I do want to say that, you know, America definitely welcomes our international students. You all contribute extensively to not only the diversity of thought and ideas and progress, but you know, it is an exchange. It's you sharing your ideas, Americans sharing their ideas with you, so that we can not only continue to collaborate while you're pursuing your academic studies, but further on, hopefully that collaboration will continue through work and other sort of cultural type exchanges. So I do want to say that I feel very honored that everyone took time out of their day today and went outside in the heat to come here and have this discussion, not only with myself and my colleagues, but here with your other fellow potential students. So again, thank you so much for coming today and taking that time out of your day. It really means a lot to us.
We have a few more online questions.
Great.
Okay. This one, I'm going for my bachelor's degree and I'm not very clear right now about my future plans. I might want to do an MBA after that, or I might come back to work in my home country. So if the visa officer asks me about my future plans, can I go ahead and say that I'm not very clear right now?
Great. And the question from our online participant was, I would like to study in the US for my bachelor's, and then I'm not really sure what I want to do after. Maybe I'll pursue a master's program, maybe I'll come back and work. And the answer is that's absolutely what you should be doing as you're entering your bachelor's studies. We understand not everyone has their plans exactly lined up. I, for one, did not know exactly what I wanted to do when I started my bachelor's, and I think a lot of people are in that situation. And so, no, that's perfectly fine. If you want to be, just be open and honest and say, I'm not really sure, but what I know is I really love this topic, and I want to study more about it, and I want to learn more about it, and maybe after pursue a couple of these options. That's definitely a great and honest answer. What we do not want to see and is, just be frank. If you're not really sure, you're not really sure. You don't have to come up with a very elaborate story if that's just not what your future plans are. So just be honest, and we do appreciate that.
The next question is, I'm going on an F1 visa. What visa should I be applying for my kids who will be traveling?
Oh, that's an excellent question. The question is, I'm applying for my F1 visa, and what visa category do I apply for if I want to send family along? For both the F1 as well as the M1, the vocational students, and the Js, the exchange programs, they allow we call the primary applicant, so the person studying for their studies, to bring their family members with them. This would include spouses as well as their children, and they would get what we would call a derivative of that visa class. So for an F1, for example, their children and say their spouse would get an F2 visa, and they're able to, when they apply, all apply together. What's important to note for those is that you will work with your educational institution to make sure that you have all the proper I-20s for all the family members, as well as any other fees and supporting documentation that might be needed. And then when it comes to having family members apply for the visa, what is important is that the primary applicant, so the student going to the US to study, gets their visa first. Once their visa is applied, their dependents are able to also get their visa. This is done in two different ways. Either the whole family unit can go to an interview together, and then the primary applicant would be assessed, and then the dependents would be there also for the interview. Or say the student, the F1, received their visa and had to travel to the US, and the timing wasn't right. The kids are still in school, but then they're going to join at the summer holiday. Then those family members could apply after the primary applicant gets their visa. So as far as timing is concerned, your family can follow you to the US after you get your visa, or you can have your family come with you and apply all together.
Can I know the earliest possible dates for F1 visa that you're supposed to be allowed?
Sure. The question is how early can I apply for my F1 visa? Again, you can apply up to 180 days prior to your course of study starting. And if you want to know the exact wait times, you can check on our Consulate webpage to see the wait times if you're concerned about a timing in any way. Again, that wait time changes every day based on demand and other factors. So unfortunately, I can't give an exact date today on how early you could get a visa, but just check the website out and work that timing into the timing you need in order to apply for the visa and then pursue your studies.
Would having relatives in the US affect the chances of my getting visa approval?
Great. And the question is, if I have relatives in the US already, does that have any sort of effect or impact on my visa approval? The short answer is, when we have an applicant at our window applying, we are looking and assessing the applicant themselves and whether or not they qualify for the type of visa that they're applying for. The other factors that go in, whether or not they have relatives in the US or they're from other sorts of backgrounds, these things are not weighed in as much as the applicant itself and how they can demonstrate why they qualify for the particular visa that they're applying for.
Hi, I'll be going for my bachelor's degree first, and I may decide to pursue the combined BS-MS 5-year integrated program, which would start from my 3rd semester. How would my visa be extended?
Great. The question is, if I'm going to the US to initially start my bachelor program, and then I decide to do a combined bachelor's master's program, and I'm already in the US, how would my visa be affected? What the visa does is it gives you the permission to go to the US port of entry. At that point, our other colleagues in the US government, Department of Homeland Security, they actually determine who enters the United States. So think of it as a visa is your ticket. It allows you to get on the plane and go to the port, and at what time an immigration officer determines if you're actually allowed to enter into the country. Once you're in the country, it's USCIS, the U.S. Immigration Services, that determines whether someone is allowed to continue to stay in the country beyond when they were initially allowed, or change their status so they can pursue other sorts of options. So unfortunately, I can't speak on behalf of USCIS for this particular question. So I just encourage you to talk to your educational advisors to see what options are available, and if you need to do any other forms or documentation, as well as you can go to USCIS or travel.state.gov in order to look up how you would change status or extend statuses once you're in the US.
Another question. I'm above 18 years age, but my parents accidentally signed my I-20 form. Will that be a problem during the visa?
The question is, I'm an adult as far as the US government's concerned. I'm over the age of 18, but my parents have accidentally signed my I-20 form instead of myself. Will this affect my my eligibility? I'm actually not sure of that specific case, and I'd recommend that they speak out to their educational advisors to see if this will be an issue and what next steps would be. Great. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
What circumstances are people refusing entry?
At the port of entry. So the question is, what kind of circumstances would someone be refused at the port of entry? As not an immigration official, I'm not sure the specifics, but I would imagine that there's a whole host of issues. What I would recommend is just be a prepared traveler. Make sure you have your passport and your visas in order. You have at least 6 months validity on your passport, which is required to enter the country. And be prepared to show any sort of supporting documentation that might be needed. For students, they may ask for your I-20, or if you are an exchange visitor, the form that's like an I-20 is called a DS 2019. Again, it's an official form from the government that verifies that you are attending an institution or accredited program. So just bring those documents with you. Be prepared to speak about your plans once you're in the US, how long you'll be there and for what reason. But specifically, I'm not sure what some reasons would be to turn someone around, as we say. Again, I want to thank everyone for participating today and taking time out of your day. I appreciate those that have been following our podcast as well as participating through WhatsApp and the Facebook messaging. And again, please, any specific questions to your case, or if anything pops up that you want to know more about, please just go to these. Great. Oh, I guess we have one final question.
Can I apply for a visa for the second time with the old reporting date on my I-20? Actually, I'm waiting for the updated one from the university.
So the question is if I would like to reapply for my visa and I have the old I-20 and I'm waiting for the updated one, am I still able to apply and go to the new interview? Unfortunately, I don't know the specifics on that. So for those more specific questions for your particular cases, I'd like to refer you to our website, or you can do specific inquiries here at supportindia@ustraveldocs.com. And I'll leave it to the professionals to answer those specific questions.
Just one final.
Great.
Sorry, just too many students sending me stuff. How do I show that I'm not a pension immigrant? Do I explain this to the officer, or do I need to show him?
Great. And the question is, how do I explain to the official at my interview that I am not an intending immigrant? Do I need to bring documents, or do I have to explain specifics on that? Again, as I mentioned, we are looking for that you meet the qualifications for this visa class. And for the student visas, it's, are you a credible student? Do you have the means to fund your travel? Do you have onward plans to leave America after your studies? This will be done through a line of questioning. You may be asked for documentation, but that is not our sole factor when we're seeing if the law applies to your specific case. So feel free to bring some supplemental documentation if you feel that it will help your case, but realize that it is not our only determining factor. You may or may not be asked for that documentation, and what it is it's a conversation. So just be prepared to be honest and be prepared in researching your school, your academic studies, talking about some of your future plans, whether they're still in kind of an infancy stage where you're not really sure, or if you have a very a detailed 5-year plan going down the line. So, great. Again, I want to thank you all for coming, and please, yep.
Thank you for the presentation.
Thank you.
Just to let you all know that we're having a pre-departure orientation program on 6th of July in Chennai. We would urge you students to register for the same, because we're going to be talking about topics that are very relevant for your stay in the US. The PDO will cover topics like academic integrity. We'll be talking about cultural and social integration, life on campus, pre-travel arrangements, do's and don'ts, etc. And there will also be another US Vice Consul available during the PDO to talk about F1, how to maintain your F1 status in the US, and to talk about what you need to do when you are a student in the US on an F1 visa. So do consider registering for that event. If you have any, if you want to know how to go to register for that event, just go to our website, usief.org.in, and the information on how to register for the pre-departure orientation is available on our page. Or if you can't find that, then there's our email ID is available on that page. Send us an email and we'll send you a link to register for the program. There is a cost involved in attending that program. We are charging $600 because it covers, we'll be providing you with lunch and snacks during that program. So do make sure to register. It will provide a lot of useful information. All right? Thank you so much to all of you who joined us for this session today. I would just like to also mention we have 2 more sessions in the coming weeks, which will be useful for students who are looking to go to the US for their higher education either in fall 2019 or later. Those 2 sessions are for prospective students. Coming next week, we're going to be talking about a graduate student who is currently studying in the US is going to talk about his experience as a graduate student. He is actually a student from SSN College when he's currently in the US, so he'll come and talk about his personal experience of studying in the US. He's here on a vacation and he's kindly volunteered to speak at this forum. And the next week after that, on 31st of May, which is again a Thursday, 3 to 4 p.m., we'll be having a session titled Parents Meet Parents, where we have parents of students who are currently studying in the US come and share their experience of their children's journey of being, same journey that you've been through. They're going to talk about that and how their children are doing in the US. So if you're interested in attending those sessions, please join us Thursdays, 3 p.m. to 4 p.m. The first one, graduate study experience, will be next week, 24th May, and the Parents Meets Parents session will be on 31st of May. You can always look up our events calendar on this website for more information on how to register for those sessions. So thank you again for joining us for this afternoon session.